control the vertigo.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthologic. I'm your host, Mark. So, in this show, we are getting back to the Twilight Zone. This one's about episode 2, which is called One for the Angels. This, I think, is considered by many as a classic episode. I think a lot of people that watch Twilight Zone will be familiar with this one. To give you a brief synopsis, it's the one where the salesman gets visited by death, and he somehow cons death into agreeing that he's allowed to make one great pitch before he gets taken, and then he decides he's never going to pitch again. But circumstances change and things happen, and for the best of intentions he decides to do a great pitch, and therefore, well, you know what. Yeah, quite a good one. Directed by Robert Parrish. Robert Parrish, an interesting director. He's an actor too. He acted, for example, in the original film version of All Quiet on the Western Front. I looked this up because it seemed like this was made in 1930, one of the very first talkies. And it seemed like he'd be too young to be in this, but apparently he wasn't it. But he was 14 at the time, so there you go. He's also got some interesting credit spots. For example, he directed parts of the infamous Casino Royale film from 1967, which was directed in the end by 5 different directors. He was one of those directors. He directed the sections involving Orson Welles and Peter Sellers, which is kind of interesting. Anyway, he directed this episode. This one was written by Rod Serling, as were many of the first season of The Twilight Zone. Cinematographer Joseph Lachelle, who was also the cinematographer on the first episode we covered. And this aired on the 9th of October 1959 for the first time. So, yeah. It's really mostly a two-hander. There are some other characters in it, but mostly it's a two-hander. It involves a character called Lou Brockman, played by Ed Wynn, and Mr. Death, Death himself, played by Murray Hamilton. Ed Wynn's kind of famous for various things. He's got that kind of cartoon voice. He appeared, I can't remember his name now, but he was in Mary Poppins as the uncle that kept laughing. Yeah, that was him. And he's been in various other things. Murray Hamilton also appears in this as Mr. Death. He's probably best known as the mayor in Jaws. When he was significantly older than here, he appeared as the mayor in Jaws, so he's kind of known for that. The only other significant character in it really is a little girl called Maggie Polanski, played by Donna Dillaway, who was a child actress. Has been in various things, but she appeared in this. She does a good turn too. There's a few other characters, such as the Doctor and things like that, but the two main leads have the most dialogue by far, and Maggie appears and helps drive the plot, actually. Starts off with a nice sort of opening. I don't think we saw in episode 1, which is kind of an animated sequence. Now, apparently that's only present in season 1. It's a shame, really, because it's quite cool. And reading about this particular episode, apparently Edwin was pretty good on set. He was keen. He really tried to give it his all. He was always around, ready to go. He would never just go back to his trailer. He was always on set, or had his lines learnt as best he could. He had some trouble with some of the longer sections. The lines he found a bit daunting. But I think Rod Serling himself sort of said to Edwin, well, this isn't live. We could just do more takes, so it's fine. But he kind of knew his stuff. Now, Serling had written this story much earlier, and I think the first version of it was called The Storm. I could be wrong. It might be The Pitch, where he wrote a story where a sort of pitch salesman knew that mobsters or gangsters were coming to kill his brother, so he basically created this massive pitch to get a big crowd around, so these mobsters couldn't get through to get to his brother, and he gave his chance for brother's care, which is okay. But I think this story kind of works better. It's kind of more metaphysical, really. So it's an intro. It's got a long history till it evolved into this form. Now, Serling actually wrote this for Wynne. He knew of Wynne. He'd worked with Wynne before in Requiem for a Heavyweight, his teleplay, quite famous. It really was kind of the making of Serling, I believe. And Wynne was part of that, and he wrote this part for him. So Wynne was written as this pitch salesman. But Serling's a kind of a gentleman. He does not criticise people in public, certainly not actors and people that worked on his project. As far as I'm aware, he's kind of keeps stum about this. But there was an internal memo where he really felt, in the words of the memo, Wynne's performance let us down terribly. He was not impressed with Wynne's performance. I don't see it that way. I quite like it. Now, what he is a sort of motor mouth salesman. Wynne doesn't do that. He's more of a heartfelt, sort of taking it easy, showing you he's genuine kind of salesman. And on that score, I think he works. It certainly works for me. So it's also interesting that Death here is a fairly complex character. He's not the sort of Angel of Doom, cold-hearted kind of guy. He's vicious somewhat. He comes across almost like a corporate type or an accountant. He's writing stuff in his little book, and he's got it all written down. He says, yeah, you've got to come here because that's the rules. And he says, he also opens up, I think you get the impression he likes Brookman. He opens up and says, well, if you've got mitigating circumstances, what can we do? He says, if you're on the eve of a great invention or discovery, but Wynne convinces him, look, if I've always wanted to make the perfect picture. Well, no, first I think he says, I want to go and see Zulu's dance. So I've got to go out, and he says, nah, that's no good. So Wynne sort of says, I want to make the perfect pitch, which he describes as one for the angels, one that'll open up the heavens. Kind of interesting way of putting it. And to say, okay, I can allow that. And then at that point, he goes, I got you there. I'm gonna never make a pitch again, so you can't come for me. He goes, there's going to be repercussions. Yeah, I kind of like the way Death's introduced. First, we see him pitching outside. There's a bit of a misdirect at the beginning of this episode because it's the Twilight Zone. It starts off, and we kind of see a close-up of robots. So it's like, where's this going? But it turns out they're toy robots. I kind of like that tiny little misdirect, though it's kind of obvious they're toy robots right from the beginning. And he's just pitching in the street, but this man's watching him and making notes. And then he turns up his apartment, and everywhere he turns, he seems to be there. He kind of seems to move around. And then the little girl comes up, Maggie, and sort of says her toy's not working. And he spends a little time, Brookman spends a little time with her explaining how it's broken, what she's done, and how to fix it. And then he mentions, don't you say anything to my visitor? He goes, what visitor? And so it becomes clear the little girl cannot see this guy. And he says, who are you? And he doesn't explain himself directly. He just strokes a flower, which dies instantly. Really nice visual touch. And also is really nice is Brookman immediately realises who and what he is. He says, you're Death, aren't you? So he's not being treated as a stupid character, because some writers wouldn't have confidence for the audience to realise what's going on, and would have to spell it out. Death would have to explain exactly who he is and stuff like that. Serling's got more confidence than that and doesn't do that, and I like that he does it by sort of visual means. He shows, he doesn't tell, which is always good. So I like those touches. I also like the way Death conducts himself. He's you kind of get the feeling he likes Brookman, and it gives him some leeway, and he kind of lets himself go a little. He's not so officious that he is a stickler for the rules. He kind of is more relaxed. But once he decides he's never going to pitch again, something happens. The little girl gets hit by a car and is in a bad way. And it's a great little plot dynamic to have a child threatened. And it's clear from the writing and the way the character interacts with the little girl that he is really very, very, very fond of children, and he wouldn't have anything hurt them. So what happens is he realises Death tells him, I have to go up at midnight and I have to be there at 12 to sort of claim the little girl. And he impromptu starts pitching. And Death says, well, this is silly. There's no one around to pitch to. He goes, well, I can pitch to you. And he starts selling him stuff. This is possibly the weakest bit in terms of being convincing that Wynn could really create such a great pitch that someone would be so enthralled they'd forget they'd got an appointment. But you know what? It works well. Wynn both delivers quite well, and it's filmed in such a way as to make you feel that Death is really convinced. You know, he's as you know, we keep getting time lapses, and his collar's getting a bit looser, and his hair's getting ruffled, like he's really and he's sweating a bit. He's convinced, and at one point he starts telling him, Brookman's selling him ordinary cotton, but he explains where it came from and how precious it is, and Death's going, I'll take them all. So he's really being sold on this, and then basically the clock passes 12, and Death missed his appointment, but they both realise that while the little girl saved, he's now made his perfect pitch. He's pitched for the Angels, so he has to come with it. But he's got no complaints. He's happy. Giving his life up for a little girl suits him just fine. And at one point, he also says, is it up there? And Mr. says, oh, yes, you made it. Probably by this act, or if he hadn't have done this act, maybe it wouldn't have made it, right, if he'd have let a little girl take his place. And there's a nice shot at the end as they wander off talking. The camera lifts, and and they're talking about, one for the heavens, one for the angels. And the camera lifts through so in the foreground is a lamppost, but the camera pans across the lights, pans upwards across the lights. So there's this kind of feeling of transcendence, ascension, as it were. So that's kind of a nice touch. So I kind of like this episode. I thought it was a pretty sort of good one. I can kind of see why it's a classic. I've seen it before, and I remember thinking back on it, when I sort of read it was going to be this one, I thought, that's a kind of a schmaltzy one. It's one of the ones where the Twilight Road gets schmaltzy. And it is a little, but I found it a very pleasing episode in terms of it. It didn't overstay its welcome. It wasn't written to extend time, to pad out what's going on. It all kind of worked well. And man, the time flew by. It kind of didn't, there was nothing slacking or loose in it. So I liked it a lot. I also liked the fact it kind of showed a different side of the Twilight Zone. If you'd have tuned in the week before and seen the, is anybody there episode, which was a paranoia, loneliness kind of episode, dealing around that side of the human condition. It's kind of nice to see this one, which did a totally different aspect of the human condition, which is empathy and kindness, and, possibly a little bit of analysing the unambitious as well. Maybe they can make a change if they really want to, and we all can make a change if we really want to. So I kind of like that aspect of it. So it's a good, solid episode, this. If you haven't seen it, go find it. It's very good. There's also a radio play with Ed Begley Jr. I listened to a little bit of it. It was okay, but yeah, kind of, once you've heard Ed Wynn do his version of it, it kind of pushes every other version out of the way. So the original version, I think, is very solid. So I think that's it from me. So bye from me. And as I always ask, is anybody out there?
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to